You're listening to Parasearch UK Radio. News, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch UK Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to The Spirit Dimension with your host, Kerry Greenaway, right here on Parasearch Radio.
Good evening and welcome to The Spirit Dimension. My name is Kerry Greenaway. It's Sunday evening and time to bring you something a little different. Tonight I'm bringing you a lovely gentleman who came to my attention through the Parasearch Radio group page, and he got in touch because he has had a firm interest and experience in regard to precognitive dreaming, which is what we're going to discuss tonight. My gentleman's name is Mr. Tony Hawkins. Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine. Yes, I'm sort of experiencing being launched into this unusual experience of being on the radio. I guess I'd like to just tell a dream because then I could, I don't have to think I'm living in an unfamiliar space.
Okay, so first of all, before we get into that, Can you tell everybody a little bit about your experience in regard to how you started to realise you were having something called precognitive dreaming?
Well, the first thing, I mean, I spent my life writing, and the first precognition I had was really writing a story, and it led up to the Aberfan disaster, which many people probably don't even know what that is now, but it's where a coal tip slid and destroyed a school. Mm-hmm. And I realized that for 6 weeks before it actually happened, that awareness of something like that was building up. And I started this story. I mean, it was this huge epic, which began with, the very first part of the story, we see this huge triple-peaked building, which is from some future science fiction situation. And there's a town at the foot of it. And built across the face of this huge building is something called the avalanche chute, which is for deflecting snow avalanches which come off the building and would otherwise destroy the town. So the very first thing I've got is something about stopping an avalanche. And as the story built up to the 6 week point, I had to stop writing because of the children who would be destroyed. I mean, there was going to be it was a typical sort of terrorist kind of story. So these people were going to blow up a dam, release a sea of mud, destroy a town, and the soldiers with it. And the problem was the children. And the story got more and more bogged down until I absolutely stopped. And I couldn't carry on and went to the pub. And I was living without news. I mean, we didn't have a radio, television. I just wrote. Walked into the pub, and right in front of me is the television showing the images I'd been seeing building up in my mind, just the word Aberfan. And that was a real shock.
And, I can imagine. How did that feel, though, to you? I mean, you felt the build-up, didn't you?
Well, yes, but
Pre.
it was all happening inside me. I mean, I had no idea of any connection with the outside world, and I mean, at one point in the story, the character. I mean, there's this 19-year-old girl who's a kind of, warrior type, and at some point in the course of getting bogged down in a snowstorm, she's gone for a walk and she's dancing, and what's she dancing about? And I had to kind of bring her into me, and her head was above mine and moving away, and I had to kind of grab this thread. I mean, all this is most odd, and pull the thread, and then this bronze shield like thing slipped into my head, and I suddenly it was like a record coming in. And I suddenly understood about everything, and everything was to do with total love. And I wrote 500 words very rapidly about total love, and then tried to fit it into the story. I realized afterwards that the person of my imagination had some kind of independent existence, that this being was a mind above mine or beyond it. And while I thought I was writing a story about people, just an ordinary adventure story, something completely different at another level was going on. And that was 1966, and pretty much everything I've ever written since has gone that way. Something has, I've discovered something much deeper is happening. I mean, right up to the present. I mean, the book I'm writing right now, I can feel myself kind of getting embedded in this whole thing about artificial intelligence and this kind of thing. And there's a sense of it all going somewhere in a great wave, and it's all beyond me while I'm trying to write stories in the midst of this.
So this is a definite different feeling from just the creative process of being a writer, from putting a story together in your head and translating it down onto paper, to how this feels.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what it's like being other writers, but to me, I'm just telling stories. Even now I start off to tell a story and things happen. I mean, coming on to dreams, I mean, in the present story, I had a time travel situation, and I wanted a convincing way of explaining time travel. If I didn't have a good way of doing it, I didn't want to do it. I just didn't want to say, there's this body here that comes from the future. That seemed ridiculous. So what happens? I have a dream, and the gist of the dream is that for the purposes of the story, I'd been to the Callanish Stones in the Hebrides. And in that situation, in the story, there's two situations 200 years apart. So in the dream, there's two situations at Callanish. One's a little bit of a gate, and the other's a corner of a wall. It's very sort of Harry Potter portal-ish, like an old boot. And these two things are 200 years apart. Now, to get them to synchronize, you have to bring in the whole of time. And the way it happened in the dream, you've got these two separate layers of time, as it were, like photographic film. And suddenly, this huge tower of all these thousands and millions of layers of this film-like stuff is rising up into the sky. And at the top of it is this kind of wise, old, rather sad-looking man looking down, who kind of looks like God, I suppose.
Right.
And this was the answer to time travel. If you are the totality of everything, then everything is simultaneous with everything else. And so if you have in the story, you have the simulation of everything. You have an infinite machine. And so you can't cope with all time at once, but you can take two places and bring them together. I mean, in the dream, it was all to do with something like quantum tunneling through all the layers. And dreams like that leave me with a feeling of, behind this, there probably is a truth. Sometime in the future there'll be a technology. But
so you think it gives you a better, so you come up with a concept for your story, but then you'll have a dream about it, which kind of gives you the answer that you need for the story. And you think, how the hell did my brain come up with that?
Yeah.
Is that what we're going with, really?
Yeah, yes. We're hopefully we're talking about the underlayer, the subconscious, the superconscious, the God, whatever you want to call it. I think the precognitive dreams are evidence for that. That deeper layer of everything, where in some way everything coexists. T.S. Eliot said it wonderfully, and I can't remember the quote. If all time is one time, all time is, well, as he put it, unredeemable. For the purposes of a story, I would have to change that last word, but maybe you can't change it. Maybe the truth is, But, time past and time future is somehow contained in time present. And time present, I don't know, contained in time past. If all time is eternally present, all time is unredeemable. I guess it's like, wow, he said it all there. So anyway, what I would like to do is tell you the story of a couple of dreams that, hopefully take us towards that place that we can't really think about, if we try to think about it, well, if I talk about time travel, I want to, the conventions are, you have this body, Doctor Who arrives in 1966, blah, but the dream gave me a clue of something, a more sophisticated way of having time travel, and I'm sort of dying to tell you this dream.
Go on then, tell me the dream.
Right, okay, so this is 1968, September. I appear to be lying in bed, remembering a dream. I'm awake, and as I remember the dream, I remember deeper layers, previous elements of dreaming, and that suddenly the dream is taking off. Or the process is taking off. And really, I realize afterwards, it's all a dream. Even though I dream, I'm awake throughout the whole experience. So I found myself walking back into, literally walking back into different scenes, one scene after another. And there's one point where I meet a woman, and I shout at her, what's your name? And she says, Mrs. Johnson. And I say, when were you born? She says, 1683. That's just one of the people I met. I keep going until I come to this empty void. And I can see very faint filaments of light there. And I say into this, and what is this? I kept repeating that as I was walking back. And a voice says, spiders. And I say, spiders? And another voice somewhere off in the void says, spiders? And then, as I'm standing there in this kind of darkness, a woman comes up and grips my elbow and says to me, in fact, I can imitate your life if you want it. and then suddenly the black space is full of these boiling copper green clouds, and I suddenly know I'm going to see God. And it's this feeling of like the ultimate lonely mountain summit, and I kind of think, I don't want to see this. And then the clouds clear, and there's the back of this titanic figure. It's a man made of gold or brass, but it's kind of like a greenish gold. And he's huge, like as big as a mountain. And I'm looking at this, and then a voice says, and I had to check afterwards if this could be true, Moses saw God's back parts. I wonder if I can see his face. And so it rose up like a kind of rocket or a plane around this giant figure, and it slowly turned and became this huge-bellied, very fleshy, huge-bellied, like pregnant or something, figure, still male. And the face was all sorts of, creatures and sort of kind of spider bodies, and the eyes were hollow like a skull, and there was like a plant root in the shape of a raised elephant's trunk. And as I'm looking at it, a little woman appeared, about a quarter of his size, and she did a little hopping step and vanished. And she had a strange kind of round face with like plaster, sticking plaster over the eyes and the mouth, and this very loose, crinkly skin. And she did this one hopping step and vanished. So after this, I mean, this was this epic process. I'd never experienced anything like it.
And this,
anyway,
let's just clarify, this isn't a meditation, yeah. This is a dream.
No, this is, I thought I was wide awake when it was happening. It was happening completely spontaneously, but I'm pretty sure by now I was asleep throughout the whole.
So was it lucid dreaming, where you feel like you're like physically there?
I didn't. I mean, the word term lucid dreaming is going to come into my awareness long afterwards. It wasn't lucid in the sense that I thought I'm dreaming. I thought I was awake. Anyway, what happened after September 68, Christmas 68, Apollo 8 orbits the moon. There's the next spring, I think there's another Apollo. And anyway, I'm sitting in my kitchen, and the full moon's looking through the window. It's a brilliant full moon, and I'm looking at it and imagining the astronauts creeping across the edge. And I suddenly realized the face of the moon is the face of the little woman. And so and she's about a quarter of the size of the man. So if she's the moon, he must be the earth. And the back figure that's all gold maybe is the sun, the cosmos. And about that time, I wrote a piece about the moon, which was a kind of ecstatic, silly piece, and it ended, I should be 2 billion years old next July 20th. Anyway, so come July the 20th, they land on the moon, Armstrong steps off. And when I was writing up the dream, I said about the little woman, small but ponderous like a giantess, taking one jolly little leaping step forward. And what Armstrong said when he landed on the surface is, it's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. It's so like the two sentences. And the little woman is making this hopping step, just that. And I realized afterwards her crinkly skin is like the spacesuits and the way the astronauts walked, Buzz Aldrin's hopping around. And so I got the sense, and this is the first time I saw it, that this was a precognition of the moon landing. I mean, it wasn't just that, it was a lot more. And of course, as time passed, and it felt like a step into nowhere. And as time passed, and of course now it's nearly 50 years has passed, it was a step into nowhere. They never went back. And that was the last thing I wanted to think at the time, So this dream, which was really huge, I mean...
It sounds like an epic. I have to say, it sounds very epic.
I never experienced anything like it again in terms of dreaming, and but the amount I've learned from it since, it's always with me, and even over the last few weeks, it's been with me in a very profound way. I think I'm realizing that it was the image of the planet and even the history of the planet, because it starts off mentioning Moses, and then we're coming to the present, and this is about not seeing God's face. I mean, what it says in Exodus is something, you shall see my back parts, you shall not see my face. And kind of get the feeling that through history over the last 3,000 or whatever years, we're moving towards seeing the face of God. I mean, we're living in a civilization, much of which, people don't know anything about God. Mm-hmm. But I think we're talking about the real total essence of the universe, or the origin of the universe, rather than what tradition has, collected over the thousands of years. I mean, this will be seeing the real thing. And I think that's where we're heading as a civilization. And as I understand it, I mean, in my stories, I have this idea of the artificial intelligence. I mean, you can go on YouTube and see people talking about this, saying we're going to build, machines that will be millions of times smarter than human beings. God knows what those machines would be like. But my understanding, or in my story, the machine is built for the purpose of reading all the world's dreams. It's like you've got the Large Hadron Collider for exploring matter, and what the future will realize, ideally, is we need a similar machine for exploring the hidden layers of our psyches. And of course, the manifestation of that is dreaming. So we'll build some kind of equivalent of a Large Hadron Collider for reading dreams. Now, you could say, well, that's unlikely to happen. But I don't know, I mean, 20 years ago, who would have believed Google Maps would exist, where you could see you could see the parking signs. I've done it. I wonder what the parking is in Golders Green. So you go on Street View and you can read the signs. 2 to 4 p.m. You can do that all over the world now. No one would, and the idea that we will have machines that can read our minds direct, you just look at all the things they're doing, that's, unless we destroy ourselves before, that's the kind of thing that's going to happen. And once we got to reading all the dreams, we'll have this gigantic amount of information about what the psyche really is about. I reckon if you took all the dreams I've recorded...
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot, isn't there? There's an awful lot.
But if you did and read them end to end, you would get through them in less than a day. Now, and I know people... International Association for the Study of Dreams I belong to, there's hundreds of people there who've got much bigger dream collections than me, who have all these precognitive dreams. But still, if you put them all together and read all their dreams, you that's a tiny fraction of all the dreaming that's ever gone on is going on right now. And it's just these few people who give time to it, catch these little glimpses of extraordinary things, like the dream I've just told you, mm-hmm. which I think is an amazing dream. And as to 50 years after I had it, I realize it's even more amazing than I ever imagined.
Okay, so can I stop you at that point? Because a lot of that dream you described was very symbolic, wasn't it? There was an awful lot of symbolics in there. Which you've interpreted.
I don't know. What do you mean by symbolic? I mean...
Well, it wasn't a clear precognitive, as in when you look at some people's dreams, they're very specific. They can... do you see what I mean? So when you have your precognitive dreams, they're very, very symbolic, aren't they? So
well, this one is...
The interpretation comes... quite a while after you've had that dream, when you can look at historical situations and then go, that seems similar to the dream I had, and then you look back and you can make it not fit, make it fit to the dream. What would you say to that?
That's all I know, is that I will only know it was precognitive afterwards. Now, if there are people who can dream of the future and know they're doing it, I mean, I think I know one or two who think they're doing it, wonderful. I can't. I never have. Could I tell you another dream, much shorter?
Yeah, of course you can,
Which is very specific. Now, okay. July 15th, 2009, I recorded this dream. I have to sing my song at some big, public building. It's a kind of strange building. I mean, it felt like the Albert Hall, but it was full of odd places with concrete, little rooms. And there were loads of people there, but I couldn't see them. Anyway, so I'm going to sing my song. I've got my guitar. And as this bit of the dream goes, I begin increasingly to realize I can't sing, I can't play the guitar. I'm going to be performing in front of all these people. And then a man comes out from under this concrete stair, and he's carrying a guitar, and he's going to play my song. And as he comes closer to me, he turns into a person I knew probably last time, 1968 or 9, called Dave Russell, who was a poet, singer, and so that's the dream. And about a week later, so what was that, 15th of July, so around about 20th of July. And by the way, I had joined the International Association for the Study of Dreams, IASD, about a year before. So there was a lot of communicating going on. And a woman called Janet Garrett, who lived in the south of Spain, who was English, was coming to London to visit relatives, and she wanted to meet me. So we met at the Freud Museum, or we certainly went there. And so we spent a while there, because we're serious students of dreams. And then we walked from Swiss Cottage, where that is, across Hampstead Heath to Highgate to have dinner. And so all this takes a long time. And then walk down to Highgate Tube to get the train to King's Cross. And Janet will go on. Now, all this took maybe 4 or 5 hours, maybe longer, and we're coming back now towards the rush hour. Normally, I would have, coming down the Northern Line, I would change at Camden to go up the other line to my home. But I decided to carry on to King's Cross, just to be, gentlemanly to Janet and see her off at the station. So as we step onto the escalator, as I step onto the escalator, there's a man in front of me. And I'm kind of looking at him, and I'm seeing him from the back. I'm thinking he looks familiar. He looks like Dave Russell. I mean, Dave Russell had a way of standing, that was, I don't know, you could, apparently. Anyway, we get to the top of the escalator. I step in front of him. Janet comes up the other side, so she witnesses this. And before I can ask him, are you, because by now I can see him face on, and I know it's him, he says, Dave Russell. She sees this. Now, this is a man I hadn't seen for 40 years. I mean, I'd met him once on the Underground in all that time. He gave me his email. I contacted him afterwards. I still haven't seen him. And now it's 50 years, and we have this one encounter on the tube. I dreamt about meeting him in this building in which everybody's hidden. He'd come out from under a staircase. And the chance of me being behind him in the rush hour is very, very low. Anybody could have stepped in between in that half a second or so, and I wouldn't have seen him, so I'm right behind him. Now, usually the argument against precognitive dreaming and this sort of thing is coincidence. It's just a coincidence. Forget it. Mm-hmm. Now, I've just sort of this may, this is fantasy mathematics, but it's still true. What are the chances of me picking that one half a second or a whole second when I would stand behind Dave Russell and know about it a week before, and working out the odds, say, over the 50-year period that we haven't met each other, and I'm not going to do the arithmetic now, but the odds work out at something like 3 million to 1, which is, I don't know, 100 billion times greater than your chances of winning the national lottery. And when we are dismissing coincidence, which when you examine it is that unlikely, we're making a huge mistake, because if science were to look at that coincidence fully, it would realize what it presents is information about something deeper. The mathematics of this are such that you couldn't predict it. But what it demonstrates is that at another level, there's a life going on which can see this future event. Because in all of time, it's almost like if you're talking about God, which is a code word for whatever you like that created the universe, you have something like an infinitely infinite being, and everything coincides with everything else. So this sort of coincidence is like glimpsing a dolphin breaking the surface in the ocean. You kind of, wow, what's that? And it's like a sign that there's a lot of life under the sea, and if you could find a way of looking at this, these coincidences, you would find the world opening to another level of intelligence, which is what I think will happen when we get the super intelligent machine to start processing all this stuff.
The problem is, the problem is, as you say, a coincidence is a series of events, isn't it? Or something happens that just has like a really tenuous connection, and then it's only us who joins those dots to make it so. Yeah. And it is an unusual coincidence, but is it precognitive?
Well, look at something further about this dream. Dave Russell was going to sing my song. Now, I'm doing it now because I'm talking about the dream. So, in a sense, without that dream, I would have nothing to tell you. So, the dream, in a sense, is giving me the means of singing the song about this other level of intelligence,
possibly.
Well, as I read the dream as saying that, and we're now nearly 10 years later than the actual event, but it's still allowing me to sing my song. I mean, this isn't the only time I've told the story of the dream. So what am I saying? Yes, you're saying we connect the dots.
Yeah, we connect the dots with coincidence, with seemingly with lots of unconnected things, and we can join the dots. This is a basic conspiracy theory kind of thought pattern there. You know what I mean? But it kind of feels like that there's too big a gap.
In what way? What's
for when the dream happens to when the occurrence happens?
Well, it's about a week. That's too big.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm playing devil's advocate. You understand? I don't know.
Oh,
I've never experienced a precognitive dream, so that's what interests me. Is that it does seem unusual. It does seem unusual, and it's not the first time you've had this. You know, as I said, from beginning through, you've had plenty of dreams where you've been able to look at it from a symbolic point of view and then connect it to things that have happened. It is very interesting. But I do wonder sometimes whether the amount of learning and our belief systems that are set these dream sequences up, and then afterwards we feel that they're connected to something that's actually happening in the physical reality. As I said, I've never experienced it, so it's interesting to hear somebody that does experience it in that way. I mean, you're a very creative person, aren't you? Because you write books.
Well,
and you're quite well learned.
Well, I'm not going to go there. There are learned people. I listen to them on YouTube at times, and I think my jaw hits the floor. Yeah, I mean, all I know about is my own experience, and a little bit about other people. But how can I put it? The dreams aren't just being precognitive. I mean, the Dave Russell dream is telling me it's going to allow me to sing my song. He's going to sing my song for me. So, and in the case of the little woman, it's saying the future, this is a step into nowhere. The future of this is, don't forget, this is leading up to 69, and the excitement of the moon landing was huge. That this is going to go nowhere. That's what the dream is saying, and it's giving access to another level of intelligence. That, I mean, the precognitive element, all it did was catch my attention, and then I'm thinking, well, if this is real, is the rest real? And in what way?
It does make you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah. And when you've had enough, a lot of these dreams, many of which seem completely trivial, I mean, this is where when people talk about deja vu, but you're crossing a road and you suddenly see a person make a gesture, and it reminds you of the dream of a previous night or something, or you see a texture of a wall or something that it's like your dream was there, but it isn't giving, as far as we can tell, great information. It's just, I don't know, it's almost like the dream, part of the dream is in the future and floating about tomorrow. And I've had hundreds of these, and in IASD, I know people who've had hundreds of them, thousands of them. When there's that much dreaming of this sort, you kind of move into just accepting whatever is going on. And I think the main thing to get is that we're talking about another dimension of intelligence. So the precognition doesn't matter so much. I mean, what a lot of people are doing is dream telepathy experiments. Well, as far as I can see, our individual minds are like these three-dimensional little crispy things in this vast sea of intelligence, and which we don't see, but it's common to all of us, So the fact that if we did have a machine to read the world's dreams, we would probably find that millions of people are having the same elements on the same night, and and we would start to see. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
So, no, that's fine. So you run a group, a dream group.
Yeah, I did for a few months this year, and I'm very lazy. I haven't really got it back together. So saying I run it is a bit of an exaggeration at the moment.
But you was finding some interesting correlations in that,
Oh
wasn't
yeah,
you?
the very first time we met, the dreams were very similar, in an odd sort of way. I mean, if I wasn't so lazy, I'd have, made meticulous notes and so forth. But there was something quite. There was, how to describe it really, but I mean, people were basically having like dreams of groups of rectangles, and sort of like what are these things called? Like drawers, but with dividers between them, shelves, and there's one particular shelf which made sense of all the rest. And then another person had a lot of dreams about charts of buildings and of a city, and everything was unsatisfactory about this until she could find the key one, which was the dream. There's a painting called The Ambassadors, which has got this very elongated skull. So when you look at it, you can't see it's a skull. You have to get to the right angle. And she had this in the dream, and that was the key to everything else. So it wasn't like we were just having dreams of, having rectangular dreams. We were having them in a particular way that, each time there was a key to something else. I mean, I think about 3, people out of 5 or 6 had this, and it was really striking. And sort of think, what's going on? And another time, the first time I went to one particular dream group, and I had a dream involving fire, and again a similar number of people, and at least 3 other people had a dream of fire. And if I told you all the details of it, it blows my mind to think about it all now. It's like, what is going on? Dreams are multitasking. They're not doing one thing. They're not just being precognitive. They could be almost being precognitive on that particular dream of 3 different things. It's where you get the sense that this is a multi-faceted intelligence which can correlate many different things, and all I'm experiencing in my dream is a little part of this, and it's a whole world that must be full of vast information that we're never going to get until we develop a technology to do so.
Do you not think the dream world, though, I suppose you would call it, is literally just our brains assimilating all the information it's bombarded with throughout the day? And I mean, I know from my own dreams, I've had some wild dreams myself. I don't know anybody out there who hasn't. And, in one particular dream, I was being chased by a T-Rex, and I can't tell you, I hadn't been looking at dinosaurs or anything, so where did that come from? But I have obviously watched films and read books and been to the museums and stuff, so it's in my brain somewhere. So at some point, something in that day must have conjured up something that brought that memory to the surface subconsciously. I wasn't aware of it. And at night, it just kind of involved it all together. Do you not think it's something like that? Because, as I say, we're bombarded so much with so much information. And if you read books and you watch news or the TV, or, you're coming into contact with multiple people throughout the day, by the time you get to rest, your brain's got to sort this out somehow. And it's just a jangle of everything that it is. So have you noticed a difference between a correlation of those kind of dreams, of a brain sort out, to a precognitive dream? Is there a marked difference in that for you? Because I wouldn't be able to tell the difference, to be fair, because it's such a jumble.
Yeah. I live a very different life from you. Let's face it. I mean, whenever possible, I would be just writing, and I've been receiving a pension now for God knows a long time, and so it's a much simpler life. So dreams, similarities to world events do stand out more obviously in my experience. But let me tell you one thing. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, I can only think of one time when I had a dream of T-Rex, and that was probably about a week ago, and there was a witness. And I blamed her because she had a really, really serious cold. And so it was the noises she was making in the night that I dreamt of as a T-Rex. Now, okay, so we have here just a tiny little synchronicity, coincidence. You to say you were being chased by a T-Rex. I dreamt of a T-Rex just about a week ago, and I can't think of another time. Yeah. So you just told me through words, but maybe, in the dream world, some other kind of communication has been going on, and if we had that, great dream reader, we might find, T-Rex all over the world a few days ago. I mean, I don't know that this is a very illuminating thing I'm saying, but anyway.
No, it's interesting to explore, though, isn't it? Because, like you say, I mean, you could say, in a funny kind of way, maybe you precogged our conversation and didn't know I was going to bring up T-Rexes in the conversation. So who knows?
It's possible, but the dream. I mean, I make perfect sense of the dream in relation to well, I had the cold too, so we're both making horrible noises, and the dream is kind of doing, if you could catch a moment, that moment, any moment in a dream, you'd probably find it's connecting to hundreds of different things that in our past, in our future. In other people's lives, and it's maybe even possible other universes. I mean, if you listen to Brian Cox, a very straight scientist, and he's saying with a completely straight face, the best explanation for how perfect this universe is that there is an infinite number of universes. I mean, if he's saying that, then I can say, well, maybe we're dreaming of other universes. So there we go.
Who knows? Who knows indeed? I love Brian Cox. I would just like to say that live on air. I would love to get him on a show and talk to him.
Well, he's very amenable. I mean, he's doing a world tour at the moment. You could. But I saw him talking with who's that outrageous person?
Russell Brand, I think you'll find he was talking to.
Absolutely, yeah.
A very interesting conversation they had.
A very interesting conversation, yeah, fascinating. So, and when I would look at a conversation like that, where are we going? Like a while ago, a scientist, a very straight scientist, isn't going to be talking to somebody like Russell Brand, and yet there they are, they're kind of merging together, they're moving on. And this conversation is going to keep expanding. Well, we hope it will, unless civilizations we know collapses. I'm sort of hopeful that civilization won't collapse. Sorry, I missed that. But one thing I would say, at a level of this ultimate being thing and, getting to the point of having a machine that can read dreams and all of that, I feel very optimistic that we're going to get there and go beyond into some kind of very enhanced life. And when we get there, we aren't going to regret not not getting there. We aren't going to regret that we're not living in the past when, kind of as we are now, as individuals without any kind of overview of the world, and the world is being run by the battle of egos, and some of these egos, oh God, look at Donald Trump. You kind of think, that man is the president of the United States. You think, he had no experience of the job before he got there. I mean, this is a miracle, really. But what we've got now with this kind of world of clowns, we won't have in the future. The future of the machine will not be restricted. We will be liberated millions of times more than we are now. I mean, it's we won't. Well, we will have a future, whereas now I think we can reasonably say we don't. The global warming thing is being massively underplayed. Basically. And people like Donald Trump saying, I don't believe it. I mean, life on this planet could become totally uninhabitable. You just have to read the science, and so the future of the machine will be much better than that.
Well, let's hope so, because it doesn't look great right now.
No,
so let's hope the precognitive dreaming world comes up with some positive news for the world, because it is in a horrible situation at the moment. It's like, as one of my friends once said recently, there's no worldwide conspiracy. We are just completely rudderless.
Very good. Yeah, that's great.
What is it? The Association for Precognitive Dreaming, is it?
No, it's the International Association for the Study of Dreams.
Okay, so what sort of things get discussed there?
Everything to do with dreams, and many things that you wouldn't think were to do with dreams. People are very creative. If you wanted to, do a series on exploring dreams, there's a whole range of stuff. You want to find out about lucid dreams. There's dozens of people who are lucid dreamers in different ways. The present president of the organization is, majors in lucid dreaming, called Clare Johnson. Written all sorts of books about it. There's you could never get to the bottom of it. There's so much information and types of people there. A lot of straight scientists, but they're interested in dreams. And as I'm talking, I'm thinking, what we need are people like me, or not just. I'm me, I don't know the people like me, but all sorts of different people, including very scientific people, to get together and talk about what this thing is, this world of dreaming, and what it's the result of. As long as we're not in a situation where people are automatically dismissing coincidence without even thinking about what it is, and if what I said has remotely any truth, that is billions of times more unlikely than winning the lottery, even if it's not that much, if that were so, if a scientist could look at that and think, hey, if that's true, then this is impossible, but it happened, or something like that. They would have something to grasp. They would be able to, they'd have somewhere to go in a scientific fashion. And
but the dream world is being looked at, or the dream factor is being looked at, isn't it? And has been for a long, long time. In regards to the scientific world, I know somebody from Northampton University that is very studied in regards to nightmares and lucid dreaming.
Yeah.
So this whole realm is actually being looked at quite closely, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think they'll probably link it up with,
Sorry, excuse me.
they'll link it up with brain scanning and all that sort of thing. I mean, so I mean, the information will, what's the word? Exponentially grow. It has to, and I suppose as I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm thinking I really should find more, places to put my thoughts, because I tend to, I tend to think of the standard physicist, scientist, this dismissal of whatever it is I've experienced. And I'm sort of living in a kind of history of that, and not, so there is this lack of confidence really in approaching straight scientists to talk about this, because the feeling is just be dismissed.
I don't think they would be in this day and age. I think, things have moved on quite an awful lot. Do you know?
I mean, I think, things are changing at an incredible rate. It's obvious that quantum biology is expanding very fast. I think if we get to the point of realizing the human brain is a quantum machine, then that will also be part of this point where we start to expand hugely.
How close do you think we are to that?
Well, God knows. I mean, I have this sort of feeling that Jim Al-Khalili was somewhere in the past saying something scoffing about quantum biology or something, anyway, something like that. And here he is now, the chief pundit for it, delivering lectures on how, how robins navigate. He's saying it's the quantum entanglement, and I kind of hear that coming out of his mouth, and I think, really, is that him saying that? I mean, people like, fanciful people who like me, who say, oh, quantum entanglement, and, we have our wooish thoughts about it. But this guy is totally straight, and he's talking about it.
Quite a lot of people are. Even in the paranormal field, they're talking about quantum entanglement quite a lot these days.
Yeah.
It's becoming more of a thing.
Yeah, it's one thing to have fantasies about it. I like doing that. But it's quite another if you're actually, you've got machines that are doing it. You've got your laboratory somewhere. So I think everything is going to happen very, very fast. And probably in the next 50 years. And even, sooner than that, things will have... I mean, look at the changes that have occurred in the last, 20 years to do with the internet. The internet is a complete disaster at the moment, I think. But it's just, chaos. You need to rebuild it from scratch, I think. But just looking at what's happened, and that's that rate of change, and the rate of change is accelerating. So, I think in your lifetime, I mean, I don't know how old you are, but...
No, it's not going to happen in my lifetime. I'm a lot older than you think. Anyway,
well, people live a long time these days, but,
On that note, we have actually come to the end of the show. That's been an hour.
Oh, well, right, okay. Well, I hope it's been mostly coherent.
It's very interesting. Thank you so much for joining me tonight on the Spirit Dimension.
Well, thank you, Kerry, for giving me the opportunity.
You're very, very welcome. If you miss any of our shows, don't forget, you pop over to our YouTube channel, Parasearch Radio. We also have a Parasearch Radio archive channel over there for all of our older shows, in case you want to catch up on some of the older shows that we've done. For all the news, reviews, blogs, all the up-to-dates, go over to our Facebook page, Parasearch Radio, and very soon we'll have another competition for you. On that note, join me live tomorrow for the weekly roundup, let you know what's going on this week on Parasearch Radio, live on the Parasearch Radio group page. I reckon it's going to be about 5 o'clock. So I'll see you then. On that note, thank you once again, Tony, for joining me, and I bid you all a very good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.